So I just got back from Thanksgiving break, and I thought that I should probably record this video, otherwise it's never gonna get done. Originally, I thought I was gonna have a video out next month, but plans changed, and I decided that I didn't have enough work accomplished to actually make a YouTube video. So here we are 2 months later. For those of you who don't know, I'm creating a game about a kid playing a video game. More specifically, Ethan is playing a video game, The Arcane Trials, and here's the kicker. Ethan sucks at the video game. So, in typical Ethan fashion, he scours the internet for a way to cheat the game. And finally, Dum Ethan finds one and executes the virus into the game. You play as the virus, with the sole purpose to defeat the game for Dum Ethan. And if you don't, he will delete you and find a new virus to beat the game for him. Which, again, will be you, but Ethan doesn't know that. So if you're thinking this idea is ridiculous, I got this idea from my friend because he decided to get a bot to sell and buy players in FIFA. Now, to clarify, he doesn't suck at FIFA, but it seemed funnier to portray that he has to cheat in order to beat a video game. Anyways, last video, I made a class system that has been completely revamped. I also made a couple of weapons that, again, have been completely revamped. I tried making clothing, I failed hardcore at that, and then I moved on to making a movement system and weapon scripts, which have not been maintained, so they might even need some revamping. Without further ado, let's talk about what I've been working on for these last 2 months. Before starting on the game lobby, I decided that I should probably find a style to follow. I eventually ignored that completely, but I still do have a style that I am supposed to follow. For those of you who are wondering, it is a Japanese style village. I got the idea from Sekiro Shadows Die Twice and Ghost of Tsushima. I just think those games are visually really cool, and I thought it would be nice to do something similar. I should note that I've never created a lobby in my life, and I'm also not very good at modeling. And on top of that, in order to make a lobby, you have to create a lot of assets. To start off, I worked on the terrain, and I worked on it for a solid 2 to 4 hours. It isn't the best, but I've never created a lobby before, and terrain falls under that category. So it took a lot of trial and error, but I finally got it in a good enough place so that I could start building some assets. The first asset that I started to work on was a temple, and I hoped that this area could be where the player teleports into the actual arcane trials. I also believe that I want some logs or training dummies inside of this area so that the player can kind of test out their abilities, see how much damage they do, etc. I then went on to make the blacksmith's workshop, which isn't awful, but it has 30,000 triangles, and you want to keep that count low because otherwise lower NPCs might lag out, which is not something you want to happen when you don't have a player base. I forgot to mention this earlier, but when I created the terrain, I added in a river that flows out into the ocean. And if I have a river, I need a way of crossing that river. So another asset that I created was a bridge. So obviously that the player could walk across to get to the other side. After building the buildings, I realized that a lot of the work that needed to be done was decoration. For example, bushes, trees, rocks, stuff of that nature. So I'm just going to list off a lot of those small decorations really quick. I made some rocks, trees, wooden fences. I made a mini pagoda, or what Google calls a pagoda. I also made some lanterns. I made some clay pots to go around the map. I made a well that doesn't really fit well with the map. I made some crates, buckets, and barrels. The lobby in its current state looks like a mess. A lot of these assets need to be remade, and a lot of the assets are just lying around. For example, the trees are just one by one. I need to actually make a forest if I want it to look natural. Another thing that needs to be done is making more homes or buildings that would actually fit the style of my build. because otherwise it won't look like a village, which is ultimately the goal. The second thing that I worked on these last 2 months was sword recreation. I'm generally not satisfied with my builds, but these revamped weapons are just leagues better than my first draft of weapons. It took me about a week to finish the Tachi, which is my replacement for the greatsword, and then another week for the straight sword. The straight sword was a little bit trickier because I didn't necessarily have a plan when opening Blender. I would just hope that ideas would come to me, and so finally, before I got on Blender, I started sketching out some sword designs and found one that I liked. It's very simple, but I just wanted to get something done, and I didn't care about something fancy. The dagger only took me about a day because I learned from my previous mistake and used a reference image. Then after the swords were finally done, I began to animate. I very quickly put together some rudimentary animations for the straight sword. I forgot that I need a walk animation, I forgot that I need dash animations, I forgot that I need jump animations, so it really just is some basic attacks. However, the Tachi attack animations are a little bit less rudimentary. I spent a lot of time on them, a lot being 6 hours, and I'd have to say that the Tachi animations are probably my best work. Take into account I don't animate often, so it's pretty easy to make it my best work. As I said, I just have to spend 6 hours on it. Alright, moving on. The last thing that I want to talk about is the class system. So if you watched the previous video, one of my favorite classes was the Fury class, or the Thief class, but I've decided to change that name to the Osseous class. And here's my current outline for the Osseous class. The Osseuses are criminals, disgraces to society. They're dark, cynical. Part of their character is that they don't want to be seen by others because they're embarrassed. They now wear shame masks and long cloaks, moving quickly in order to not be seen. If you've ever seen Naruto, then the Osseous' way of traveling is the yellow flashes flying Raijin, which is just so sick to me. I love that idea that I can throw a knife and then I essentially teleport to it. Another feature that I'm thinking about adding for them is because they're criminals and thief class, whatever you want to call them, they're more analytical of the battle. So for example, the boss's weak points, I want them to be known to the Fury after a couple of minutes of fighting, or maybe there's a system that I can give the Osseous ability to find the boss's weak points, maybe by studying the attack patterns or something like that. I think that'd be a really cool feature. The next class is the Lambda class, and the Lambda class is more like a brotherhood, similar to Knights. Their class ability currently is a status increase, and they have true damage, which is essentially critical attacks. However, when put up against the Osseous class, the Lambda class just seems and sounds so lame, so I think they need some revamping in their own right. And the final class is the Malifree class. The Malifree class are essentially the tanks, and in my mind, their job is the most important. Their job is to keep the mages alive. Now, I haven't thought much about the mage class, except that I want them to be incredibly weak, and they have an insane damage output, as they should. But part of that is that they need a protector. So the Malifree's class's job is exactly that. They will essentially be the cornerstone of every team. I believe that I want their taunt to give the ability to obviously taunt the boss, but also give a status increase to their teammates. For example, speed for the Osseous class or strength for the Lambda class. I think that'd be awesome. And also just kind of fit the personality of the Malifrees, because they are the cornerstone of the team. They're essentially the leaders, but also not the leaders, if that makes sense. Anyways, I love the idea of the Malifree class because it's kind of like that one friend who ties the group together, or is the glue of the friendship. I think everyone can get that reference, and that's why the Malifree class is my favorite. It's probably because I have someone in mind when I think about this class. Anyways, that is all for this video. I'm super excited for the third devlog. It'll be hopefully coming out next month. I'm gonna try and stick to that schedule and try and make myself proud by setting goals and making sure that I stick to them. Just every month, the progress might seem kind of slow, but I can kind of see the progress, whether it be within my modeling skills, animating skills, scripting skills, and that is honestly why I started this channel, just to document progress. And so it's really cool to see, and I hope that you enjoy this, because it'd suck if you didn't. But alright, I got nothing else. Just have a good rest of your day. Peace.